you've got this 90-second wave where cortisol and adrenaline and other chemicals are pumping through your body. And that's when you feel the anger, the frustration, and the churning in the stomach, all the tightness in the shoulders. And it's essentially, if you ski or surf or snowboard, it's riding that wave.
Yeah.
You've got 90 seconds, and that's natural and normal to feel that. But any longer, and all you're doing is pressing the repeat button, which is just ingraining and reinforcing that negative loop, that disempowering story.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of The Big Chat. I'm Coco, your host for this week, and I'm going to just be honest. I've just had the most amazing conversation for 30 minutes with my guest and realised I didn't press the record button.
I haven't pressed record.
So I've never done that in all the time that I've been recording these podcasts. Obviously, you're thinking, why does that matter? You've got the sound on your film. Well, no, it does matter because I want you to be able to hear this man's words because they are real words of wisdom. So what my magician videographer does with this, I don't know. And my amazing Giles Phillips, who does my editing. But I'm going to start again for you, and it's going to be even better, I'm sure, than the chat we've just had. Even a dress rehearsal, I was told by our guest. I'm talking this morning to an amazing man called Scott Walker, who has written a book, Order Out of Chaos. That's quite apt. And that's the book itself. And I'm going to read again the intro using my Edney and Edney glasses, who are kindly sponsoring this episode. Thank you, Edney and Edney, so I can read well. But this really does encapsulate what we've been talking about and what we're going to talk about. Scott Walker is one of the world's most experienced kidnap for ransom negotiators. He has helped to resolve more than 300 cases along with similar crises such as piracy and cyber-extortion attacks. Scott spent 16 years as a Scotland Yard detective engaged in covert counter-terrorism and kidnapping operations. He left the police in 2015 to support organisations, government departments and private individuals negotiate the release of hostages all over the world. Scott uses his decades of experience to help individuals, teams and organisations develop a unique understanding of what makes people think, feel and act, specifically in times of adversity, conflict and uncertainty. I mean, that's incredible. He regularly speaks at events around the world and coaches executives at all levels of an organisation on how to enhance their resilience, emotional intelligence and communication skills to improve their strategy and leadership. He also supports companies to build a resilient mindset culture and develop engaged, fulfilled, purpose-driven and productive teams. Hello, Scott.
Hello again.
I mean, I do like to keep it real.
Absolutely.
I mean,
it's the only way.
It is the only way, isn't it? So where do we start now?
Where do you want to start?
Let's start at the beginning.
Yeah, always a good place to start.
Yeah. So you were in the police you were a police detective for 15 years. What was your passion to become a police detective?
I always wanted to do that. I always wanted to go nick villains.
Yeah.
Lock them up and really give a voice to the people that didn't have one. So the victims, their families, and just make the world a better place. However trite and cliche that may sound, you know, I enjoyed every single day of it. I really did do meaningful work. I mean, I would have done it even if I didn't get paid for it. There's sometimes I used to pinch myself thinking, I actually get to do this. And I know the police get a bad rap sometimes these days, and sometimes for good reason, but by and large, just some really great people, hardworking, heart-centered people doing the best they can for people who need that support. Yeah,
and so what? I mean, 50. You don't look old enough. We've already had this.
I've had an easy paper round. I moisturise well.
What were you doing?
My beauty routine.
You'll have to tell me later.
I'm joking.
What were you doing before you were a detective?
I was actually a barrister's clerk in Birmingham.
Oh, we didn't get that the first time around.
No, we didn't.
No.
And the accent will probably come out a bit more now. So I did that having left school, and something at the back of my mind was like, I just want to be a cop. And then I kind of joined, and then quite quickly I joined Special Branch, which was involved in dealing with counter-terrorism and all that kind of stuff, which is exciting and interesting. And I went through various roles, detective roles throughout my career, ending up the last few years dealing with the kidnapping side of things.
I mean, dealing with the kidnapping side of things, we did talk earlier about, how many kidnaps take place. And you mentioned that people don't want to talk about how many kidnaps take place, but there's a lot, isn't there?
Yeah, worldwide, I mean, there's tens of thousands.
Yeah.
But a lot of places where these are taking place, the government quite naturally doesn't want to advertise the fact because they want to get tourism and business investment. So there's tens of thousands. Very few are reported. And the ones that I would get involved in, particularly the ones when I left the police, would be linked to big insurance policies or companies that would be looking for some business development in West Africa, Philippines, Middle East, Latin America, those kind of places.
And so when you left the police, did you work for a specific kind of body or department?
I left and I went to work for a company in the City of London that specialised in discrete crisis management.
Wow.
Which involved everything from kidnap negotiations, cyber-extortion, not committing cyber-extortion, but negotiating to resolve it.
Cyber-extortion, I mean, how do you negotiate?
We negotiate with the extortionists for the release of data, perhaps, or the encryption keys.
Wow.
But then it'd be doing an evacuation from a country, for example. And so quite a wide peril type there, spectrum, piracy as well.
Yeah.
But it gave me a real insight, like a ringside seat into the human psyche.
Yeah.
Really about what makes people think, feel, and act the way they do in these times of uncertainty, overwhelm, crisis, and what made the leaders and the teams who really succeeded. What did they do? And what about the people who didn't succeed as well? What were their patterns? And I just noticed these patterns over time. And I thought, do you know what? I want to share this. Not give away any trade secrets or breach any confidentialities, but around giving people the tools and the techniques and the patterns that worked hundreds of times all over the world, regardless of the country, the industry or sector. There's some real patterns there, which is why I wrote the book, to share that.
And you went through a tragedy, losing your mother.
Yeah, well, as I was mentioning before, it was a few years ago now, just turned 40. I'd had a great career in the police, which literally enjoyed every single day. And then I was on a kidnapping case for a few days, and I came back and I came home and I put my key in the door, walked in, and I got a phone call saying that my mom had killed herself on her third attempt.
So sorry.
Thank you. And I realised, I'm thinking, now I am going off all over trying to save other people's lives, but I couldn't save the one life that mattered. And for me, that was a real wake-up call, as in, I'm not going to allow this tragedy to go to waste. I'm going to put it to even better use, to learn around psychology and neuroscience and how to manage emotions and how to really bring about better mental health. And within about 6 months, I'd left the police. I'd got divorced. I'd moved out of home, and I'd started in this new role. And it was a real interesting few months that really taught me the power of resilience and finding a way through all of this.
Yeah, and so did you find them, or did they find you, or was it kind of a combination?
This is the company.
Yeah.
Yeah, a bit of both, really. We kind of new people who
I can't
go
imagine
into
they
that world.
put like an ad in the Friday ad.
Yeah, in the Evening Standard or whatever.
Do you know what I mean? The Metro. We need a chief negotiator.
And often the pool from which to choose people to do that job is quite limited.
I bet.
And when I was going through the selection process, that they would say that more people have been to the International Space Station than do this job full time at this level. whether or not that's true, I've no idea. But actually, there's not that many full-time tier 1 professional negotiators outside of the police, for example. So, yeah.
I mean, it is an incredible thing that you've done. And when you talk about how you've seen patterns in people, and we were talking about sort of, I mentioned that I listened to something this morning, which was a monk talking about practicing dealing with stress. And one of the advice was passed on from a friend of mine, and he was saying that actually, your breathing alone, just regulating your breathing, because if you breathe, you're not thinking about all the chatter up there. You're thinking about two things, which is breathe in, breathe out. And that actually calms you down on a physical level as well as a mental level. And it was saying, but practice that when you're in a happy state, not always when you're in a panicked state, because if you do that, then it will get easier to do that in a panicked state or in a situation of stress. And I've been desperately looking for that for a long, long time. And as I mentioned to you earlier, my father passed away. I just disassociated totally. I recognise that now. For 2 years, I just dealt with stress by drinking too much, quite honestly. Never when my kids were around or anything like that, but it would be get to the weekend, my kids were going to their dads and who I'm not with anymore, and I would just drink away my sorrows. But basically what I was trying to do was shut this up. I was trying to explain to someone the other day why I don't drink, and it was like because that was too noisy, and I was using that to stop me doing that. And I imagine a lot of people get in a lot of trouble because they don't use use certain methods to try and just pause, because we do feel emotions and you can't avoid them. They're going to come, and if you don't go through them, you're not going to deal with them. You can keep them at arm's length, and they're not going to go away. They're just going to get worse. You were talking about the 90 seconds, weren't you?
Yeah, it's a great point you mentioned there around, if we want to get fit and healthy or strong, we don't go to the gym once and expect to suddenly be able to run sub 10-second 100 meters or have the body of Adonis.
I do, but
obviously,
not Adonis. That would look weird, but
present company excluded, obviously. It's constant repetition. It's practicing when the stakes are lower. Yeah. With your kids, with your spouse, with your colleagues, with neighbors. It's practicing this emotional self-regulation. And I mentioned the book around something called the immediate action drill.
Yes.
A 3-step process that you can keep in your back pocket. And the first one is when you get triggered, and everybody likes to be triggered these days. Let's just say you get triggered about something you see online or in the traffic or whatever.
Yeah.
It's about interrupting the pattern, the story, the trigger, and that could just be something as simple as standing up and going outside and getting some fresh air, or it could be taking some breaths, doing some jumping jacks or whatever it is for you, putting some music on, but interrupting that pattern.
Yeah.
Then the second step is you've got this 90-second wave where cortisol and adrenaline and other chemicals are pumping through your body. And that's when you feel the anger, the frustration, and the churning in the stomach, or the tightness in the shoulders. And it's essentially, if you ski or surf or snowboard, it's riding that wave.
Yeah.
You've got 90 seconds, and that's natural and normal to feel that. But any longer, and all you're doing is pressing the repeat button, which is just ingraining and reinforcing that negative loop, that disempowering story.
And you'll just keep reliving it and reliving it.
Why you get to choose? Why are you doing it again and again? And so it's once you've interrupted the pattern and you've allowed that wave to move through you, it's then, okay, well, I feel the feeling and drop the story. Now the third step is, let me ask better questions.
Yeah.
What does this mean? What am I missing? Okay, what's the opportunity here? What do I need from myself right now? Those kind of questions that it gets you out of the lousy pity party for one loop that we've all found ourselves in. Hey, I'm not preaching here some kind of virtuous person here. I've gone through that experience myself where just got to interrupt it. And that immediate action drill can be really helpful.
And that is powerful, because as I experienced myself, by disassociating, by distracting myself with whatever method, overworking, whatever, drinking, whatever, it didn't stop it. It didn't go away. It just paused it, and it just came back even worse. You know, I was just grieved for my father 2 years later than I would have done in the first place. And it was even more painful, and it was even more confusing. It just, there's no point putting off the inevitable. You've just got to go through it and then take a learning from it. And like we were saying earlier, there's a lesson in everything, whether it might be called a mistake or, you know, you can still learn something from it. You can still get a gift from it. You can still
absolutely. And no one said you've got to enjoy it or like it. Sometimes you've just got to step into it.
Yeah.
You know, and then it's, again, we were speaking earlier, weren't we, around how the meaning we give things has a real impact on the quality of the experience. Is quality the right word? Around you and I could experience exactly the same situation or circumstances. For one of us, it could be game over, worst thing ever happened, my life is done. And for the other person, it's, do you know what? Great, I can really do something with this, and I can transform my life into something better. And all we've done is we've just changed the meaning of it.
And that's so true, because, again, you know, the only thing we can really control is ourselves. And, you know, the blame game, I can't stand the blame game. When someone says, you made me feel, I'm like, you had a choice. That's my belief. Yes, I may have done something that you didn't like or triggered you with the old buzzword, but did I make you feel that way? Did I, you know, unless someone physically punches you or does something, I'm not saying that there's not a time that someone could say something, but it's, you have a choice whether you engage or not. You have a choice whether you regulate your emotions or whether you engage in that drama, that catastrophe, that story, that pity party, as I like to call it. You don't have to. That to me is something that I wish people were better educated on, because it's so easy to say, oh, this person did this and this person did that, and then they make up their own story. And then also when you talk about, you know, the brain, I trained as an NLP coach, and the main reason I did that was because neuro-linguistic programming is amazing, and it also teaches you that none of us have the same perspective.
Absolutely. We've all got different models of the world, haven't we?
Yeah. So, you know, I might say something to you and you might receive it in a certain way, but I didn't mean so. I didn't mean it in the way you received it. That's just because I have a different perspective of the world than you have. And you're having to negotiate all of that for all the people that you're dealing with, and their families and their children and the kidnappers. I mean, that is incredible. I'm a bit in awe, which is why I didn't press record, because I'm a bit in awe.
Again, it's another great point you mentioned there around, we all have our own map of the world.
Yeah, map of the world. That is it.
If I'm trying to negotiate with you or just communicate, and life is a negotiation, and negotiation is just communication.
Yeah.
We all just want to be able to communicate better. So if I'm trying to communicate with you and influence and persuade you, perhaps, is until you feel safe, seen, heard, and understood, and that you feel that I get your map of the world, you ain't going to budge. Or if you do agree to something, it's going to be reluctantly. And if I'm in business with you, I want you to come back time and time and time again. And the only way I'm going to do that is by building that rapport, empathizing, cognitively empathizing, and for you to feel, actually, Scott understands my position, my map of the world, particularly, and this is even more powerful, particularly if I actually disagree with you. If we're in conflict, I can still take the time to make you think, actually, no, Scott really understands, then that's a game changer. And we see it so much in the world now. Everybody's shouting, nobody's listening, and no one has ever changed their mind genuinely whilst being shouted at, named, blamed, or shamed. And usually the place to succeed and the place to get agreement and persuasion from is in the middle. Is find the common ground, find what works. And
really do commend you for writing this book, because you must also have incredible intuition and insight into people, because not everyone is able to gauge a person. You know, people can be open, but they can also be quite blocked. And I imagine with kidnappers, shall we call them, or pirates? I mean, that makes it sound very glamorous, doesn't it? But you know, they're not going to give much away, so you've got to get inside their head a little bit to be able to make them feel safe. That's a skill in itself.
And there was no room for error there, because if I got it wrong,
then you could lose everything.
People die.
Yeah.
And so it is about developing the intuition, but it goes back to the point you were mentioning earlier. It's about practice. And if you think, well, I'm not quite sure where I'm going to find the opportunity to practice, life will give you plenty of opportunities if you develop your awareness and open your mind and the curiosity. Life will give you plenty of opportunities every single day to practice, emotionally self-regulate, look at things from the other person's perspective, because it ain't about you. That's the first rule of any form of negotiation. It's not about you. And then people go, well, actually, Scott, what if it's not about me? How am I going to get what I want? And what I say to that is, if you can help the other person get what they want, then you'll get what you want and more.
Yeah.
100%. And it never fails to happen, because if I think, as I mentioned before, if I can be heard and we can find some kind of common ground here, the rest is easy. It's plain sailing.
Yeah. And and that is just so applicable to all levels of life, isn't it? All levels of life. I'm interested and nosy. What sort of things do you do outside of your amazing work? We're going to talk about the book in a minute, but do you have any sort of practices or any things that you do, like meditation or anything?
Yeah, I am.
Or sports or anything. I'm just interested.
Again, this took many years to refine. And again, I constantly add and tweak stuff. But what has worked for me, particularly on being on some of these cases and since then, I call it the 3 M's.
Okay, I like this.
3 M's, something I do every day, no negotiation. The one thing I don't negotiate with is myself.
Okay. Because
negotiation can be an important life skill, except when it's with yourself and it just becomes an obstacle.
So true.
It is. Oh, do I get up, or do I have another half hour in bed, or do I eat the cookie? It's like, don't negotiate with it. Anyway.
That's great though.
So the 3 M's really, one is movement.
Yeah.
So every day I would do some kind of movement. It could just be simple as going for a walk, mobility work, yoga, run, CrossFit, whatever it is. The second one is meditation. And meditation, I use it in the loosest sense, because it means different things to different people and there's different schools of thought.
Yeah.
But the way I do it is it's about focused awareness. So like most people, got a full day, lots of stuff happening, but it's just spending, even if it's just 10 minutes of sitting there quietly, not engaged in anything else, just breathing, just allowing the thoughts to come and go. I don't have to be sat on a cushion with incense. I could just be sat here and I could be practicing it.
You can meditate when you walk.
Exactly. Or driving. Well, yeah. So the second one is meditation or some kind of mindfulness-based practice.
Yeah, that's nice.
And then the third M is mindset. So again, every day I will make sure I will either read, I will listen to a podcast or audiobook or something, even if it's only for a couple of minutes. Again, just to feed the mind with improving what I do and how I can be better at just being a human being, to be honest. And the thing that works for me with these 3 M's, the movement, the mindfulness and the mindset, is it's scalable. So if I've got 3 hours, I can spend an hour on each.
Yeah.
Or if I've got 3 minutes,
you can spend a minute on each.
I can spend a minute on each. So people go, I don't have the time. It's like,
you've always got time.
Rubbish.
We've just had time to re-record this episode.
We've made it happen.
And that's the thing. I had a conversation this morning with my other half, because he was, bless him, looking at social media, certain social media platform. And of course, the algorithms will pull up what you're looking at. And if you look at something crashing into something, guess what it's going to keep pulling up?
Absolutely.
And that is just filling your head. And he was like, oh my God, you've got to watch this. This is so awful. And I was like, no, I don't. Not because I don't care, and I'm not saying I don't watch the news and I don't educate myself on what's going on around the world. But when I wake up in the morning, I read something, I meditate, and I write a gratitude list.
Yes.
And that is what I do.
Yeah.
And that sets me for my day. And then if I have time, I might have a bath, or I might have a walk, or I might do some yoga. But very similar to yourself. And that sets me on the day. Yesterday, I had no time all day. I was just working all day and night. I really was. And I got my eyelashes done. I know you all think they're natural, but they're not. But my beautiful lady that did my eyelashes, I said to her when I got there, I'd been so busy. I said, do you mind if I plug my ears in and just do a meditation for an hour while you're doing this? Because if I don't do it, it affects me. And my partner's been quite agitated the last few days. And I just suggested to him this morning, maybe you need to be more thoughtful about what you're putting into your mind. Because it is that as well, isn't it?
It is. And when we think we're doing good, or when we're doing well in life, we go, do you know what? I don't need to listen to that meditation today. Or I don't need to read, because I'm doing all right, everybody.
That's when you're most vulnerable.
That's when it starts to unpick. And then you realize a week goes by, a month goes by, and you haven't done whatever it is for you. Then, funnily enough, life gives you a reminder how you need to be disciplined, make it work for you, small steps consistently every day. And James Clear, in his great book, Atomic Habits, talks about...
That is a great book.
It's the behaviors and habits built on your identity. It's your behaviors and habits, small steps consistently applied, equals that sustained success. And that's what it comes down to.
And it is like we were saying earlier, if the the monk's mention of being calm when you're in a happy place, it's the same thing, isn't it? It's like just don't fall on just don't assume that everything's fine, so you don't need to do anything. That's when you need to keep doing stuff.
And that's when the neuroplasticity kicks in.
Yeah.
And I'm fascinated by neuroscience, and I do a bit of studying on it. And around how the more you can rewire yourself for gratitude, for happiness, for compassion, for ease with life, then it just becomes stronger and stronger and stronger, more resilient. And so when the big stuff does happen, you'll go, I've got this.
Hypnosis. I did half my training to be a hypnosis teacher, and I'm actually finishing my training in August. I had a little break with it. But it is because the brain, it so interests me, the science. I was a yoga teacher for a long time, but I have that mindful practice, but also it's the science, because it's just, we did a thing where they put a machine on the brain, and it showed the different levels of the brain sparking when you were under hypnosis. And it's unbelievable. It's just so powerful. And yeah, if there were more people that were doing these practices or helping themselves, then it helps. Again, it sounds cheesy, doesn't it? But it helps everybody.
Absolutely.
It is like you mentioned before, the ripple effect, butterfly effect, all of those things. One little change can change everything. And like your book, like you'd said, you want one person to read this book. Now let's talk about this bad boy. Come on. We talked about you. I think everyone's going to want to read this book now.
Let's hope so.
I want to read it now. You won't let me take this book. I get very upset when my guests come on and they don't either bring me cups of coffee, glasses, or books if they have anything to do with those things.
I'll send you one.
You are writing another one though, aren't you? So maybe I get two.
Yeah.
So this book, Order Out of Chaos, it's a collaboration of your experiences, but also case studies you mentioned.
Yeah, I use case studies, real life kidnapping and extortion cases from around the world, which have been sometimes amalgamated for legal reasons, so people can't identify themselves in it, but all based on real events. And I use those as the thread and which a platform from which to share the tools, the techniques, the strategies, psychologically as well as physically, that people can do, that they can develop this resilience to thrive in adversity, to communicate better, to have those difficult conversations that so many of us will put off through fear of what might happen by having them. And yes, it's all put together in a easy to digest, very practical book that covers, as I said, everything from the psychology around things to everyday tools and techniques people can apply straight away.
And is this available to get now?
Yeah, it's out on May the 25th.
Okay, so it will, by the time
you can pre-order,
it will be.
Yeah.
It will be out when this goes out.
Well, that's great.
It will be literally, where will they be able to get it?
Everywhere.
So you can pre-order it on Amazon.
You got Amazon now, Waterstones,
Brilliant.
Foils, W.H. Smith's, it's all there.
Are you doing a bit of a book tour?
Hopefully.
Yeah, you will. And you're getting a Netflix series. Not forgetting that.
That's you manifesting it.
Well, I mean, this is just, honestly, this is the sort of thing I would watch all day long. And I could talk to you all day long because it interests me on so many layers and levels. And I think there's many people out there. And also it really makes you think. It's think-provoking in a good way. Like you said, you'd always wanted to be a cop. If I could go back, I would have been a lawyer.
Okay.
I would have loved to have been a lawyer. My dad hated lawyers because he was like, oh, they're just, what about if you've got someone that's guilty? But
so what was it about being a lawyer that appealed to you then?
Because giving people justice, honestly, like I'm quite smart with my words. And I think I'm a good protector. And I think I could have, had I been in a position when I was younger to have disciplined myself enough to learn, which I wasn't for whatever reason. My sister, she went on and she became, she was in the army. She was an officer in the army. Then she was a doctor. My brother's a chartered accountant. We kind of got that, all of us wanting to help.
Yes.
In us, which was a great gift that we were given from my mum and dad. But the lawyer, I mean, my dad, it's funny. He always said he didn't want to be a lawyer. But he was always a Mackenzie's friend to so many people.
Okay, yeah.
And those that don't know what Mackenzie's friend is, basically, how do you describe Mackenzie's
Somebody supports victims, witnesses in a court hearing, particularly like domestic abuse cases and things like that.
So he would do that just to help out. So we once took went to court for something, and the person that we were in there with actually called my dad Perry Mason. They said, who is he? Perry Mason. I always remember the judge saying, would you sit back down, please, and address the court appropriately? And I was like, Anyway, we won that one, obviously. But he had this fascination with how the human psyche, he was very interested in the brain. And I think I do too. And I think that's something, my partner's always saying to me, why don't you just do it now? And I'm like, I don't know. I have a great friend that's a lawyer. And
coulda, woulda, shoulda.
Coulda, woulda, shoulda. I know. Maybe. But I think it's the same as you, that giving people a voice. I mean, that's why I do this podcast, is to give people a voice. And so people get to know who the person is behind the story. Because it's very easy to paint a picture and them to see what they see. Oh, she's got a nice car. She does this, she does that. No one knows quite what's been going on underneath. People don't know your story. They do now. And that's why I do this podcast. And it's a passion because it helps people. Many people have had Netflix series after this. I'm really gonna.
I will give you the credit for it when if it comes off or when it comes off.
Please.
Yeah.
I'll have a word.
Please do.
But honestly, I can see this going somewhere for you because it is really powerful, and it's real life experience encapsulating human behaviour and showing you a way to work with it that is beneficial for everybody.
And I think the world needs this now.
It does.
More than ever. And
there's a lot of angry people out there at the moment.
Isn't there just? And I think the applicability of this is, as you've said, it can apply it's dealing with your kids, your spouse, your colleague, or just people ranting and raving on the other end of the political spectrum to you. And you want to, have better conversations.
Keep talking politics.
I know. We'll leave that.
But this book, the next book that you're writing, not that we're not focusing on, this book that you're going to pre-order today. Well, actually, you're going to buy it today because it'll be out. But we can pre-order it. I'm going to pre-order it because I don't think I can wait for the postman. The next one's going to be a novel. So that's more about, because you said you enjoyed doing the case studies because you could keep the anonymity. I can't say that word.
I can't even say it as well. Anonymity.
Anonymous, that one. We know what we
Well,
mean.
for me, there's
a craft and a creative process. You like that bit.
I do like that.
You
I
like
also
writing.
think that the material in this book, I could have written 10 books on it.
Could you?
So because
Do it.
there's so much material there, and so I think, well, I know for a fact that there's a second one similar to this.
Yeah.
And then, as I mentioned to you before, the novel, which is a completely different type of writing, yet did enjoy the creative part of writing this with the case studies. Again, but it's all just about stories and communicating a message, whether or not that's fiction or non-fiction, whether or not that's giving a presentation, doing a podcast. We're all human beings with our own story, with a message, just trying to convey it and relate to other people and, have fun.
I've so enjoyed talking to you. I really I feel very privileged to have met you.
Thank you. Likewise.
Because, honestly, I mean, and I got to talk to you for an hour and a half. It's just you didn't get to hear the first half. But there might be some juicy bits that a certain person ends up sticking in, little sneaky bits anyway. But I think we've covered a lot there that could really help people. And the main thing is people need to go out and buy this book.
Yes, please.
Because I think it's a really powerful message. Like it says on the front, win every negotiation, thrive in adversity, become a world-class communicator. Who doesn't need to do that? If everyone in the world tried to do a little bit more of that, the world would be a much better place. Full stop. That's it, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So honestly, thank you for sticking around longer for me.
You're welcome.
You did make me feel better inside when you mentioned that something might have happened like that in one of your scenarios. I won't name and shame, but we all make mistakes.
Indeed,
we're only human. But that's taught me something about my emotional behaviour, that I kind of got so excited to talk to you that I completely forgot to press record. The most important thing. So there's a lesson in that.
There is.
I'll learn the lesson. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you.
Yeah, thank you.
Scott Walker, Order Out of Chaos. Get this book. It could really help you. Thank you, Edney, for giving me my specs that are not just spectacular, but mean that I can read the book that Scott's going to send me and sign something probably silly, I imagine, inside it. And yeah, it's just been great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for what you've done. Full stop. About helping the hundreds of families and people that you've helped, and for being a detective all those years. Genuinely, thank you for that, because I don't think people get thanked enough for the work they do. It's dangerous work. We didn't talk about the dangerous side of it, but I have no doubts there have been very dangerous situations that you've been put in, and you've done that for the people. So thank you for that. But thank you also for passing on your wisdom, because you've got to pass it on.
You're welcome.
So it's been brilliant to talk to you, Scott.
Likewise.
Go and have a wonderful day.
I will do. And you?
Are you doing negotiations today?
Maybe. With the kids.
But not with yourself.
No, never negotiate with yourself.
Never negotiate with yourself. That's what I'm going to take away with this. Never negotiate with yourself. All right. Well, look, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on the big chat. Come back and talk to us.
I will do.
A second book.
I will do.
All right.
Thanks
then. Thanks.
Thanks.